Underdog stories shouldn't happen in sim racing. Just like the Miracle on Ice, Leicester City winning the Premier League, or Buster Douglas defeating Mike Tyson. Not only are the favorites extremely obvious, but the odds are almost impossibly long. So that brings us to November 21st, 2024, virtual Nashville Super Speedway in the IndyCar Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series. The championship title has come down to the final race and between two drivers. One driver is a former sim racing world champion and a virtual teammate to Max Verstappen. The other is almost a complete unknown to the iRacing professional scene. One driver showed up with the fastest car in the field and the expectation to win the race, while the other showed up with one of the slowest cars in the field and a hope to just survive. If we go by traditional underdog stories, it should be obvious which driver is which. But this is not an underdog story. This is the iRacing IndyCar Pro Series, where nobody knows quite what's going to happen when the 33 drivers show up to the track each week. Because languishing in the mid-pack is Diogo Pinto, driver for Team Redline and former Porsche Esports Super Cup world champion. And dominating at the front is Philip Krauss, a complete unknown to the sim racing pro world. And this is the story of the most compelling championship battle in sim racing history. Since 2019, the pinnacle of professional sim racing on the roadside has been the Porsche Esports Super Cup. And between 2019 and 2021, this series was dominated almost entirely by two people, Sebastian Job and Josh Rogers. In 2022, though, a relatively new name burst into the scene to etch his name into history.
So my name is Diogo Pinto. I've been doing competitive sim racing for about 3-4 years, and I've been on iRacing for 6 years now, since 2018, and I've affiliated now with Team Redline, and that's the team I've competed in this year's IndyCar Championship. My goal is just to have fun, like most people. I always tell everyone that their main goal is to have fun and enjoy driving, enjoy racing. Throughout the years, I've slowly improved, and I managed to do some competitive races, and here I am now.
Diogo first joined the professional sim racing ranks in 2021 when he drove at the Porsche Esports Super Cup for at first Williams and then moving to Team Redline later in the year. Diogo's first season at the top level at first did not turn many heads, but towards the end of the season he flashed his potential with a second place result at the Nordschleife. Besides that though, he only finished 18th in the standings and wasn't a serious title contender.
Yeah, at that time I was just happy to be there. 2021, it was my first year, so I was just really enjoyed competing in that series, just being there. I didn't have any goals of winning it, at least not right away. And in my second season, I wanted to get a little bit better at it, just being a little bit more comfortable in the races, not having to finish always 13th or 14th, and that being a good result for me. I wanted to do better, and I managed to be really consistent right from the start, being at the front.
Diogo not only upped his results, but his consistency to a level where no one else in the field could match, which left him in a title bout with one of the greats of PESC, Sebastian Job. While Sebastian won 7 races on the season to Diogo's 1, Diogo also only had a worst finish of 14th, getting a top 10 in every single other race of the season. And when all was said and done, Diogo pulled off the shock upset in the title championship run.
I managed to win that year, and I was really happy with that, because there was a jump between doing it more in a fun way to doing it really competitively and searching and looking for good results every time.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a hobbyist sim racer is continuing to dominate his underground iRacing leagues, but he is completely unaware that the name that he sees on his screen, the sim racing champion of the world, will soon become his rival.
Hello, I'm Philip Krauss. I've been sim racing since 2013, and I drive for private label Team Hype in the Butt Kicker iRacing Pro Series.
Philip's journey into open-wheel sim racing was not a very common one.
My mom just kind of plopped me in front of the TV when I was like a 2-year-old, watching like a NASCAR race, and it's like, okay, that distracts the kid. I guess that's good enough for us, right? But yeah, I properly got into like sim racing and that type of stuff outside of like just, watching racing, probably by watching NR 2003, and then got hooked on the open speedway community, if you ever heard of them. Evolved to iRacing, mostly oval racing, but as time went on, I more and more evolve towards the roads, usually endurance. But in 2020 is when I properly switched to like open wheelers on iRacing.
Philip took to sim racing very quickly, getting to 4,000 iRating on ovals in his first year, and even making a run at the Pro Series.
I tried to make it into that series in 2014, and I came up like 15 places short, I think. I was on the main page, but I did not make it. But that was like my only real attempt to ever go professional, I guess.
But after a few more years of racing NASCAR series, Philip decided to make the switch to primarily running road.
Honestly, I just think I became a bit disillusioned with the NASCAR side of things, and I'd already been doing a lot of road stuff on the side on R Factor 2.
And after bouncing around for a few years in different sports cars and open wheel cars, Philip found his community in the IndyCar series. And while the IndyCar scene had a tight-knit community, it wasn't very popular, even from the beginning with the first IndyCar on iRacing.
Their first IndyCar was the IR05, which I always tell people, like, I never liked that car. The community never liked that car because you just set up the car to run around the bottom line around mile and a half, and if you got pole, you won. And oftentimes that meant if you wanted to make a pass, you had to bull your way through, and that caused a lot of consternation, conflict in the community. And we were a pretty small community when I started in 2012 and still are. So you're racing the same people over and over and over again, which can be good, but around that time, it was universally pretty much just terrible.
Philip was a little later to the IndyCar community, skipping over the first couple iterations and landing in 2019. And soon after that, he was taking the IndyCar scene by storm.
I think I joined Team Hype at I want to say it was end of 2021, because I won the Lionheart IndyCar Series with them in 22 and 23.
Yeah, he was not someone we ever known of, but he was very fast, and he won the league championship in 2020, the spring of 2020, and he was very quick on road courses right away. His oval pace was also really good, but not quite like the top tier yet, but obviously he was going to figure that stuff out pretty quickly too.
At the end of 2022, a huge blow came to the iRacing IndyCar community. IndyCar had decided to take the license from iRacing and move it to Motorsports Games to make them a dedicated video game. This meant that iRacing could no longer use IndyCar's name or likeness or run any of the cars on any current IndyCar tracks.
It definitely sucked for the community because we always funded the community broadcast every season for the Open Series. I'm not saying we were running underground, but effectively that's kind of what was happening.
And when you have a group of fast drivers driving in an underground community, it is very easy for them to fly under the radar on the broader scale of sim racing.
When we lost the license, it was just kind of like, okay, what do we do now? Because would teams even bother continuing? I know the Power Slide and the Team Hype guys, they did a lot of sports car stuff, for example, and we kind of just continued running IndyCar for IndyCar's sake because we didn't really know what to do, and we didn't think it would just last a year. I thought it was going to last a lot of years. I never thought it would only last a year before we got everything back.
And then, inexplicably, after Motorsports Games shut down, IndyCar came back to iRacing, but not just officially, but in a big way through a Pro Series.
Yeah, it really intrigued me because they had, before the IndyCar series, they had the Dallara series, right? It's nice because it's an open wheel championship and everyone likes that on iRacing, but it's not a real series with a real car like the IndyCar series. And that's obviously bigger prize pools, attracts more drivers, more teams, and that's always more fun competing against the best drivers. And that really intrigued me, and yeah, as soon as it was announced, I talked with my teammates, and we decided that we wanted to do it.
And while the professional sim racing team scrambled to learn a brand new car for a new series, the IndyCar scene was mostly in shock that this was even possible.
Honestly, mostly surprised that there was ever going to be a Pro Series for the IndyCar, because we had the IR1 Pro Series that I forget when it ran originally, but then it ran last year, and both times it was a one-off. So I was like, surely they're just done with trying open wheel Pro Series.
And suddenly the arms race began. One group with almost no knowledge of the car, but the time and resources to hopefully make up the difference, and the other group with all of the car knowledge in the world, but comprising mainly of hobbyists. The first time they would battle and share the track would not be the Pro Series, but the previously announced Vico IndyCar Series.
The Vico IndyCar Challenge had already been announced, so I was like, well, this is probably the biggest IndyCar event of the year, so we're going to look forward to that. And then the Pro Series gets announced, like, oh, okay. So this is just a warm-up now.
And this warm-up series ended up attracting many more names than people previously thought. Teams like Team Redline, Drago Racing, Kawanda Esports, Apex Racing Team made it very clear their intentions to challenge for the iRacing Butt Kicker Pro Series. But for the first few rounds, uncharacteristically, Team Redline was one of the slowest teams in the field.
Yeah, we really struggled at the start. It was a car that we didn't really know about, at least comparatively to the really experienced IndyCar drivers and the oval guys.
Meanwhile, in an effort to compete against these big-name teams, many of the smaller teams in the IndyCar community began to consolidate their knowledge.
Yeah, we realized to have a chance in this Pro Series, we'd have to work together with other community members, and we'd always had a close relationship with Powerslide. At least, like, I'd been driving with Adam for fun in the V8 supercar for like a year prior to that, and definitely opened the door for that potential partnership to form.
But as the Vico IndyCar Challenge went on, more questions were being asked than there were answers. And Philip, even though he eventually won the series over all of the big-name teams, it was impossible to know just how ready they would be for the actual Pro Series.
No clue how competitive we were going to be. Like, I was confident with myself within the community. I'd pretty much won everything I could in the IndyCar at that point, so I was definitely confident from that arc, but I didn't know how long it would take the pro guys when they switched over to the IndyCar to get like acclimatized to it on the roads, just setting the car up, and then obviously the ovals.
That's right. This series was split 50-50 between road courses and ovals. Some of the drivers competing in the series were for the first time driving a competitive race on an oval track. And while this may seem trivial to a lot of the viewers at home, the drivers in the series knew how much of a challenge these oval drivers were going to be on the circle tracks.
Well, the first thing is you need to get fast on ovals, because it's really, you have a really small margin for error, and everyone is really good at racing, not only being fast, but fast around the track, but racing each other. And then when you get some sort of pace in the car and yourself, you need to really learn about maximizing the cautions, the strategy, racing around other people, fuel loads, tires. There's a lot of things. It's not as simple as most people think, especially the road guys. So it's really difficult when you're racing against the best oval guys.
When we ran Vico, we definitely saw that we had a pretty big advantage over the guys who had just switched over to the car on the oval side of things, for sure, especially on the Speedway package.
And while other teams like Kawanda and Apex and Drago were finding results in this series, Redline was still struggling.
There was some point where I thought, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done this because we're so slow and so uncompetitive. Across 2 or 3 races we slowly improved, and then it clicked for us. We just started driving at the front. Our car was fast, we were fast. But yeah, at the start there was a point, like I said, it was so bad that I was considering not only myself but the team not even participating because we were so off pace.
I saw some of the kind of the European teams struggle a little bit, but honestly, from what I saw, like, they weren't really missing that much. Like, I think the big eye opener for me was when I ran Iowa and I was seeing the Redline cars like near to the front. Like, their cars were not great, but they weren't missing too much. So I honestly knew, like, once the Pro Series ran around, they would be at the front and they wouldn't really be struggling too much.
As the tune-up series came to an end, the Pro Series qualifiers were set to begin, a 7-week schedule where the top 33 drivers in points would move on to the Pro Series. And while this may seem like a given for some of the higher-end IndyCar drivers, for Philip, it wasn't quite as smooth.
Definitely a bit more stressful than it should have been, because a lot of us got bit at the Indy Oval, getting DQ'd for a pit exit thing. I was definitely worried at the time then, but got a few strong results after that, and it was pretty smooth sailing from there.
Meanwhile, after enough work from the Redline team, Diogo and his teammates were able to pick up the pace that they were missing at Vico and were able to cruise into the Pro Series.
Yeah, it was Barber in the Pro Qualifiers where I got pulled that race and managed to win. The process of slowly getting up to speed and then put that together with the knowledge that we gathered about the car and just ourselves improving as drivers, that race all came together and we dominated that race, and that's where I thought, okay, we are where we should be and we can build on this and maintain this level or even improve on it.
And while this was far from Diogo's first pro series in iRacing, this one was going to be a lot different.
Yeah, Pesca is a lot more about performance. You need to be at your absolute best in the day, because if you're not, instead of being second or third, you're going to be 15th or 20th. So there's a little bit more margin of error in IndyCar. That doesn't mean that it's not competitive or as demanding to compete on race day, because it is. There's a lot more variables than in Pesca.
While at the same time, on the IndyCar community side of things, they were just trying to manage expectations.
My main goal going into that was just to represent the community to the best of my abilities and see what happens from there, you know? Like, I'm not going to go in saying, oh yeah, we're going to win this thing, and just do my best and make the team and just everybody else proud.
The time has come for race 1 of the iRacing IndyCar Pro Series at Indianapolis Road. Weeks of preparation have gone into this race on both ends. For the IndyCar community, they were just trying to get a decent result to bring to the ovals where they would score the majority of their points, while at the same time, the pro road teams were trying to fight each other for those top spots. But for one of our contenders, the race was over before it even started.
I know everyone on the team, myself, Adam, Jason, Rob, we'd all put in a lot of work for Indy GP because we were really strong there in VCO. Our race pace was a lot better than our qualifying pace, so an Indy GP is an easy track to pass at. I thought that would be a good starting point, but nah, botched quali started like 27th or something, really far down. But yeah, to not even make it to the start-finish line before having a total car, definitely a really big gut punch.
Meanwhile, Team Redline had a day that all of their competitors could only dream of.
Well, that race, I knew that track was very tough for me, so it was going to be a tough race for me specifically. As a team, we did really well in the pro qualifiers, and I knew that we were going to be strong. If everything went to plan, we were going to be at the front, and that's what happened. I think that was probably the strongest result for us as a team, because we finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't get much better than that. For me, it was a bit disappointing because I was the 5th, so I was the last one of that top 5. So you are really happy for the team, because, like I said, we came from being one of the slowest teams to one of the fastest now, and dominating a world championship race. But I knew that I had to step up myself if I wanted to challenge for the title.
But even in this first race, a trend was emerging. No IndyCar community oval member finished in the top half of the field, and all of them failed to qualify in a remotely competitive position.
I was thinking that at least the oval guys, we're going to beat them quite easily, right? Because if they're finishing outside of the top 10, top 15 every road race, they're not going to be contending, even if they have good results on ovals.
There's definitely a bit of frustration to it, but yeah, it definitely also lights the fire of, all right, I know I can compete with these guys in the race, so we'll see what we can do, and just batten down the hatches and lock in.
Frustrated but still hopeful, Philip had to prove himself at race 2, also at a road course, but a different type of road course at Long Beach.
That race was so hectic. Like, I think if you were to keep track of it, you'd probably have about half the grid lost at least half a wing during that race. There was a pretty big lap 1 crash in the fountain, which is honestly just standard Long Beach operating procedure.
Philip would finish a respectable 13th place in this race and the best finisher of all the IndyCar community members, but still, after 2 races, he was 20th in the point standings. Diogo, on the other hand, was continuing to up his game.
Yeah, that was a good step up for me. I was not the fastest, but I was better than Indy roads. Not only getting to the end, but getting to the end without any issues, without any contacts, and with decent pace. That felt better for me specifically than Indy road. And again, it was a good result for the team, so we really on a good phase at that point.
And as the first 2 races had leaderboards filled with Team Redline, Kawanda, and Team Apex, was Diogo starting to think about that illustrious championship?
Yeah, at that point I was not thinking too much about it. I was thinking that my biggest threat and the team's biggest threat was going to be the Kawanda and Apex guys, and not some of the oval guys. So I knew I had to step up to reach the level of my teammates and to beat the other teams like Kawanda and Apex. But at that point we were not yet thinking about the oval guys.
I mean, I think we knew going in that we needed to, at the very least, top 5 all the ovals. But I wasn't really thinking about championship at all at the time. Like, there's still 2 months of the season left. Just thinking about maximizing results race to race for sure.
But as the road professionals were starting to write off the oval community guys, round 3 began at Iowa.
I absolutely expected power slide team hype to be at the front, because during like just league races and official races, they're always there to begin with, and that's something like we poured the most time in, they poured the most time in too. So I was not surprised that they were at the front.
Iowa was probably our strongest short oval. I just completely threw qualifying in that race for sure, and there was definitely a lot of frustration behind that because I knew it was a short oval, and I knew that I had to get a good result. So to already put yourself in the back foot before the race even started, definitely big gut punch.
And while Philip continued with his trend of sloppy execution, Diogo was continuing to impress even himself, qualifying all the way up in second position for Iowa.
The quali felt like a win for me. It was one of the highest points for me in the season. The quali, even though it was good, the race could have been better. That really showed that we're not on the level that we should be compared to the best oval guys. We just don't have the level of competence and racecraft that they have. Even though our pace there was good, we just can't maximize the cautions. When you pit for a caution and you're in the midfield or at the back, we just didn't have the ability to slide through the field like Philip and Robert and some of the other guys.
And Philip would prove that he was on that level on the oval tracks by taking his 17th start position and driving through the field.
I'm not going to say it was easier, but like we had a really strong setup at Iowa. Like there was definitely a moment pretty early on. I lost half my front wing battling with Brendan Trano, another one of the community guys driving for Apex. I got lucky with the yellow. I think it was Michele who spun. That was pretty early on, so that saved my bake and gave me a chance to pit, put a new front wing on. Obviously, it dropped me further back again. I think I was in the 20s at that point, and then it was just, all right, time to lock in, see how far we can get.
The difference between the best and the other oval drivers was not their pure speed as shown by qualifying, but how they could manipulate the dirty air and also drive side by side through the field.
We always knew what to do when it comes to dirty air and searching for clean pockets of air, but you have to do it in a really confident way, right? Just positioning your car on the outside, inside, in the middle, driving around three wides, They can do it in a way where they're very confident at doing so. They're at ease at overtaking cars, at searching for clean air, blocking cars with dirty air. So we knew how to do that, but we cannot do it as confidently and as easily as they can do it.
A caution on lap 63 brought the field to pit road with a very close fuel range to make it to the finish. This final long run set up a perfect opportunity for Philip to make his way all the way to the front.
The last run was a fuel save because it was Luke McEwen and Berryman who were leading. They were top two. And Luke had to pit with, I want to say, 5 to go, somewhere along those lines. And then a yellow came out with 3 to go. Robert was, he was pushing the Apex guys to make them burn fuel so they couldn't save if they wanted to maintain track position. At least he was on Peter. Obviously that ended up working out, but at the same time, since he was following Peter so closely, and he had to run alt lines to, avoid dirty air on his front wing, he destroyed his tires doing that. He was still good on fuel, but he just had no tires, and I was able to just roll the yellow line around the track for most of that run, so my tires were really good compared to Rob. And I'm not going to say he let me go, but he effectively had to because there was just such a tire delta at that point between us.
And with that, Philip Krauss's first professional win was as much of a statement win as you could possibly make, driving up through a field of professionals to take a win. While he may not be fighting for the top at the road races, he was making the statement that he was almost unstoppable on ovals.
Yeah, still not thinking championship. Like, obviously, with the way the IndyCar points are structured, 50 points, huge. We could probably do top 5 in points if we keep this up on the ovals for sure, because at that point, it was like red line 1 through 5 on the road, usually.
And just as the road teams had thought that they had got this series almost to themselves, now they were back to square one.
I started to feel like the oval guys were really catching up. If they perform like this in every oval race, and then don't do too bad on the road races, I mean, it's going to be very tough for us to beat them. So not only we have to think about the Coanda and Apex guys, we have to think about the oval guys as well.
What Diogo had going for him in this series so far was the same thing he had going for him for his PESC championship. Consistency and never making a mistake.
Yeah, even though I didn't win any race throughout that period, it was really important because I didn't pick up any penalty points, didn't crash myself, or didn't have any terrible mistakes, bad strategies, So many factors that when you put together, you need them to win the championship.
But in the end, even Diogo wasn't free of mistakes, especially in qualifying. This system was notoriously hard on the drivers, as the Indy car was a hard car to drive in the first place, and the qualifying was only one lap, meaning one mistake would cost you dearly.
There was a little bit of an oopsie at Barber where I started, I think, 16th. At that point I was thinking, okay, I'm going to need a really good race if I want to stay in the championship fights. And I managed to get up to 6th, and that was actually one of the most fun races in the season. Because usually when you have guys starting 15th or 16th and they get to the front, most times it's through crashes or good strategy. But actually that race, it was mostly on-track overtakes.
And while for the first time Philip out-qualified Diogo on a road course, Philip had a lot more hectic of a race.
I got tired of getting passed up the inside of Charlotte's Web, but yeah, definitely my best race from the road side of things. Definitely my most complete race from the road side of things, like strong qualifying, decent race, I'd give it like a 7.5. Definitely left the race wanting more, just knowing how the qualifying performance went, but there was nothing to be upset about for sure.
Another issue that starting deep in the field has in these races is the potential to pick up penalty points by causing incidents on the track, which could lead to loss of a qualifying position or even a suspension for a race.
You have to keep it clean, have a really simple way of approaching things, not think too much about what can happen, because when you're practicing 2 weeks for a race and you have one quali lap, which decides the fate of your race, when you start thinking about it too much, okay, have one shot, and if it doesn't go well, it's 2 weeks of work down the drain.
The drivers then went to an incident-filled race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Oval, where Philip finished 4th place and Diogo finished 7th, a major win for Diogo in keeping touch with the point leaders through the ovals. But from there, it was Philip's turn to hold serve by performing at another road course, Mid-Ohio. But once again, Philip found himself starting in 17th position.
Most of the positions I made were all made before I even got through turn 1, because there was a really hectic start. I think it was Crusoe who started 2nd. You have an alternate start line for the start of the race at Mid-Ohio, but on iRacing we don't have that. So you're starting in the middle of a corner, so you have a bit of load in the car, you're turning the wheel a little bit, and he just guns it trying to match the leader, and it spins the rear tires. The car behind him can't react, hits him, and then it's a chain reaction which knocks out like 4 or 5 guys, and I think I qualify like 18th, 19th, something like that. It was not a good qualifying. That happened. See all those dead cars, and like, okay, I'll take it, 14th. And then there were more dead cars in turn 1. It just kind of kept going, and that brought me up a few more places.
Philip was able to drive his way up to 9th place, matching his best road course start, with Team Redline, on the other hand, continuing their dominance of the road courses, going 1, 2, 3. Diogo with a best finish so far of 2nd. After race 6 of 10 of the season, the points leader was now officially Diogo Pinto, leading a couple of his Redline teammates. Even without a single win in the series so far, Diogo is on the top of the board due to his consistent results.
Definitely one of my strengths revolves around that. I mean, if you want to win a championship, regardless of who you are, you need to be consistent. You can't afford to have many bad results, so it really benefited me that some of the contenders for the championship really had some really bad laps. At race we were always very strong, but in quali we always struggled to be consistent. That really made it hard for me to be focused, because I knew that I'm putting so much effort, but if I don't really know the lap, I could be in a really bad place. So, and which happened at some points, but it's some things, like I said, you cannot think about that.
But lurking 37 points behind the championship leader in 6th place, Philip Krauss was arguably the championship favorite at this point. Why? Because 3 out of the 4 races remaining in the series were oval tracks. So if Diogo wanted to hold on to his championship lead, he would have to perform at round 7 at Gateway.
Redline had made a pretty big jump on their short oval package there. They were actually quite competitive. You saw Edo Leo in the top 5 most of that race.
But even if the setups were improving, there was certain experience that would take years to master that Redline simply couldn't have yet.
Well, the biggest difference is the speed that you're going around. When you're fighting someone, you're going so much faster, and the potential for something bad to happen is much bigger. On iRacing, you have already big issues with latency and netcodes, or at least the potential to have those issues. Sometimes you have to think twice between making a move or defending really aggressively. Maybe I'll just rather finish 6th or 5th instead of finishing 3rd or 4th and maintain my championship fight.
Philip, along with his teammate Robert, was able to qualify within striking distance of the lead, which was a good sign, for they usually had even better race pace.
Another kind of funky race, for sure. Another race where we knew we had the best race car.
The race was thrown for a loop early on with an early caution, which caused split pit strategies.
They stayed out and a lot of us pit, and that kind of threw them into the ringer strategy-wise. 15, 20 laps to go is when I pit, because there was a split strategy as well, because I had a teammate, Josh Shin, who had pit earlier than that. Edo, he tried a different strategy of where we're just not going to take tires and we're going to jump them like that.
Yeah, it was a race where we didn't maximize our own performance, where the pace might not even be that bad, but we just can't maximize our own performance like the other guys do. And that ended up being the case. We ended up not changing tires at the end in a green flag pit stop, which was really costly for me. Which for an oval guy that does these races regularly, it's a no-brainer to change tires.
That was just a lack of experience on the ovals for him, and I think he learned after that race that even though the tires, they kind of plateau in terms of lap time, you really need them.
But we thought that by saving 2 seconds, we're going to jump 2 or 3 guys and it's going to benefit us, but it ended up going the other way around, and it was a really frustrating race, because those 2 or 3 places can be the difference between finishing a position higher in the championship.
And with an equal mixture of strategy and speed, Philip goes on to win his second race of the season over his teammate Joshua Chin. Diogo's race, on the other hand, took a big hit from his strategy call, leaving him in only 14th place and only 3 points clear of Philip for the championship lead. And even though Diogo was still the championship leader, at this point, Philip was by far the odds-on favorite to win it all.
So there's 1 road course and 2 ovals. We knew he'd been so strong at the short ovals to that point already. It's like, okay, what's saying we can't win in Milwaukee?
Round 8 of the IndyCar Pro Series was at Laguna Seca, and it was at this track that Diogo needed to solidify a massive points lead that he would have to cling on to for the last 2 oval races.
Yeah, for us, not myself, but as a team as well, we really needed to perform at Laguna. And for me, I was very strong on that track specifically. For some reason, it's not like because I really wanted to be fast, because I always want to be fast in every race. But for that track specifically, it just clicked for me. And I knew that in normal conditions I could have a realistic shot at the win, and that's what happened. I qualified 4th, and we took the right strategy, which was starting on softs.
Yeah, I don't understand why Jose started on primaries from the pole, because usually you want to start on the faster tire from pole, because you're controlling the pace, and that's a big thing with the alternate tire, because first 3, 4, 5 laps, that's the best you're gonna get out of that alternate tire. So you want to start on the alternate if you have clear track. Especially at a track like Laguna, where usually it's alternate favored.
Everyone started on hards, almost everyone, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work for them. They didn't have the pace at the start like the soft runners had, and me and my teammate Florian, we just sliced through their field, and we finished 1 through.
Diogo, by far and away, did his job, winning his first race of the season in the most dominating fashion so far in the series by winning by over 6 seconds. Philip, on the other hand, in a race where he needed a competitive showing, was struggling.
We were terrible at Laguna Seca. It was a bad qualifying setup and just as bad of a race setup, but that definitely got in my head a lot more than I should have let it. I should have just controlled my race and what I could do, but I'd already had a bit of a lap 1 scuff, but yeah, I'd lost the rear and made some neck contact with Elliot, I think it was, but yeah, after that it calmed down for a while. I just couldn't really go anywhere.
And this is where those penalty points has started to come into play. Throughout all of the season, driving through the field, Philip has gotten involved in a few incidents which left him teetering on the edge of having to start the next race at the back with 1 more incident point. So as he is languishing in midfield, the last thing that Philip would want is another incident.
But Florian Labigra, Jose Soria will grab points as Phil Krauss is going to lose a couple of points out of the final corner.
I knew it. He was going to go to the inside, turn 11 on Michael J.
Yeah, just wholly unnecessary for my part, because I'd been telling myself before that, okay, let's not do anything dumb to try and make up a single point, because where I was running at the time, I want to say it was around 14th, 15th or so. It was, I gained a single point from passing someone. So I was telling myself in my head, okay, nothing stupid for a single point. And then last lap, last corner, I'm close. That just leaves my brain entirely. It's like, okay, I'm plenty close. We can make this move. Just completely overshot the corner, killed Michael, killed myself, and entirely justified penalty. And I lost 2 places as a result of that. So, yeah, that put me over the penalty point threshold, and definitely not what we needed going into Milwaukee.
And now that Philip was over the penalty point threshold, he would not be allowed to qualify for the second to last race at Milwaukee. Suddenly, the championship that he had firmly in his grasp had been pulled away by no one else's doing but his own.
Yeah, there was still some positive vibes, knowing we were usually quite strong in the race, but definitely a bit defeated, just knowing you have to pass all those cars on a short oval.
Philip was now third in the point standings, 43 points behind Diogo, who was still the leader. To even have a shot at the championship going into the final race, Philip would have to outperform Diogo.
Definitely wanted it to be methodical, but we got caught up in the first yellow trying to avoid that. Ripped off front wing.
But in true Philip fashion, he drove all the way through the field as the race went on, even after having to repair this damage. Meanwhile, Team Redline was slipping. While at the beginning of the season they were the best of the rest when it came to ovals, now teams like Kawanda and Apex had leapfrogged them in their oval prowess. This all ended up converging in the final laps, where Philip had to finish in front of Diogo.
That took a lot longer than I would have liked to get around that, and that definitely killed any chance I would have had to catch, I think it was Danamore and Florian.
In a way, it was good that we finished only 1 place behind Philip, but like you said, that just shows how strong he is, and some of the drivers are on oval, that they can start at the back and still finish ahead of us. Not on top of that, you had Kawanda and Apex showing up on a really strong level, much faster than us, so we knew that we were in trouble for the last round, because not only you have the oval guys that are always extremely fast and strong, but you have Kawanda and Apex showing up that on that same level or even stronger.
Going into the final round, Diogo held a 41 point over Philip. This meant that if Philip won the race and led the most laps, Diogo would only need to finish around 19th to claim the championship. This would seem pretty easy as long as Redline brought a decent setup to the track. Unfortunately for them, that was not the case. In warm-ups, Redline was slow. Slower than the oval guys, slower than all of the other top road teams, and even slower than some of the other competitors. 19th place wasn't out of the realm of possibility.
Quietly optimistic, but at the same time, I knew the moment that the Milwaukee race ended. When we go to Nashville, I have to qualify on pole, lead the most laps, and win the race to have any sort of realistic chance.
It was a bit worrying in the warm-up that most of us were outside of the top 15 on lap time. And yeah, we just, at that point you just have to stay calm and do the best you can.
But Diogo, who has proven himself time and time again to be a master of staying within his own limits and consistent, out-qualified many cars he was slower than in warm-ups, and getting 10th place on the starting grid.
Yeah, it was one of the most important and my best laps of the season, that's 10th place. I was expecting a 17th or 18th at best. So getting a P10, I think most people around me didn't have great laps, because there was a big split between the midfield and the top guys. So I think the midfield guys just didn't hook a lap together.
I saw the gap in qualifying just in terms of raw lap time, and it's like, come on, how many guys messed up their qualifying laps, you know? It was like, if he started like 15th, oh, that would have been so much nicer. But yeah, he didn't botch the lap when it counted, and that was huge for him.
And yeah, I took advantage of that. My teammates were around me as well, so it was really, after our practice performance early on, it was really good that we were in that place, because that meant we were really taking the maximum out of our package.
And as fate would have it, a massive wreck on lap 1 happened around that 20th place, including drivers from Redline and Brendan from i5G. With a mistake in qualifying, that could have been Diogo's fate as well.
Yeah, that was the good part about starting 10th, because I knew that the risk of getting involved in a shunt was much lower than starting 20th.
But even then, Diogo wasn't out of the weeds yet, because his race setup was proven to be just slow.
For that race, we just took the wrong aero package, so the guys around us were much faster than us on the straights, but they somehow managed to keep a good minimum speed in the corners, where they managed to rotate the car and not go straight into the wall, because with us, at least, with that aero package, we just go straight into the outside. We can't rotate the car. So to fix that, we just have to take more downforce, and It was not too bad in terms of car balance. The car was good to drive. It was predictable, but we just didn't have the pace.
While Diogo was struggling in the midfield trying to hold on to every position, up front, Philip, it was business as usual.
There was a lot more racing than I thought there would have been at Nashville, to be fair. The tires definitely came into play a lot more than I thought they would have. Really, it was just domination from the whole private label Team Hype Powerslide group. Honestly, that was our most dominant display by far.
Team Hype and Powerslide secured 1st through 4th in their race, reasserting themselves as the dominators for ovals. What the championship now came down to was if Diogo and Redline could hold on to their positions.
And luckily, I had my teammates right behind me, so they kind of built the wall for me to prevent other guys from getting to me. Yeah, the race was just flowing nicely for us. Like I said, no incidents, not a lot of cautions. You never want a lot of cautions because we can't really maximize them, because when you have everyone together and we have a disadvantage on racecraft and pace, it just never goes our way, these cautions. At some point I knew that in normal conditions, as long as I keep it outside of the walls and other cars, I will get what I want at the end of the race.
As Diogo Pinto rounded the final corner at Nashville in 10th position, he locked up not only the championship, but a place in history, being the first driver since Gregor Hutu to win an open-wheel title for Team Redline, and on top of that, being the first driver in iRacing to ever win a solo championship in both an open and a closed-wheel car.
Yeah, it was a really big relief at the end of the race. I can't say it means everything to me, because I mean at some point someone will do it as well. But yeah, it's nice that not only myself but as a team we can compete in IndyCar and other championships, so we can just jump in different cars and be competitive and fight against the best guys, because at the end of the day these IndyCar guys that have been doing this car for so many years, they're extremely difficult to beat. They're very knowledgeable about the car, they always maximize their strategy, they're very good at racing each other, so it means a lot for us to show up and be good at it and fight these guys. In IndyCar, just the car for me, I just like the car more, and the races because you have strategy, different tire compounds, you have ovals, practicing on different tire compounds and different fuel loads, which for me is a lot more fun than just doing the same thing in Pesca all over again.
I hope for my sake that this isn't the only time I get to race at the sharp end in the IndyCar Pro Series, because it was a lot of fun doing it. I love driving this car, dude. Especially on the roads. Like, I know it probably shocks you because most of the points came from the ovals, but I love this car on the roads. It's the most fun I've ever had in sim racing at all when it comes just to a driving experience.
But another thing that is for certain is how proud the IndyCar community is for not only Philip, but all of their drivers for really holding their own against the best of the best in the sim racing world.
I was honestly pretty proud that they were able to achieve what they did, and like to me it wasn't really a surprise just because I raced against them like all the time in open and fixed it in other leagues, and a lot of that was just not getting much attention because we are a small community, and plus when we lost the license, you know, everyone was still doing leagues and they were winning just as much as anybody else, so it's almost kind of tragic in a way that like their rise is not more well documented just because you literally could not broadcast these races. So a lot of it was kind of happening in the shadows, and then now suddenly there's a big spotlight on, you know, everyone in the community, and to finally see them kind of get that is very well deserved.
And for the champion Diogo, he is not one and done in this series.
Yeah, I will definitely be back. As a team, we will be back as well for sure. So much nicer racing a really fast car with so much downforce compared to a Porsche Cup or a GT3, and I really like that.
And while maybe the professional teams will have the ovals more figured out next year and become even more dominant on the road courses, this inaugural season of the IndyCar Pro Series has proven to be one of the most exciting of all time. And while it's not every day that two distinct communities clash on one racetrack, the most compelling part about this series was not the results. It's even rarer than that. It is the amount of enjoyment and fun that the drivers had on this big stage.